This type of video requires some prefaces. A few things to just tackle before we dive into some things. One thing about Black History Month that annoys me is we should be recognizing this stuff all year round. And I see a lot of people use this for marketing purposes and at the same time though, like, at least it's happening, you know what I mean? At least there's representation, at least we're remembering, or at least we're giving credit where credit is due and trying to honor Black people within our country and the wonderful influence and impact they've had on our culture and in our society. So I appreciate that. But these are films you should be watching all year round, so remember that. Hello everybody, welcome to Film Fireside. I'm gonna make a list because I like it. I like lists. I'm gonna give my favorite Black History Month films, and maybe another thing to just talk about first before we dive into this. Usually this goes without saying, and I never clarify any of my list videos with this, that this is my personal list, so don't be offended, yada yada yada. I'm gonna say that and also add, like, I'm white. You know, I know that this is my straight white guy's perspective and perception being at play here, and that this is my pick of Black history films that I particularly enjoy. There's a lot I haven't seen still, so if I don't include one, be kind and just recommend it to me. If there's a film on here that you do not particularly like, sorry. I'm not really sorry for this list. Like, it's my list. I like it. These are films I enjoy. These are films I really appreciate and will frequent every now and then, you know? And some of them are ones I've just seen recently that I'm now going to frequent. This is just my way of showing support. I may not be the most qualified person to suggest to you the films you need to watch during Black History Month. I'm just giving you my suggestions. Most of them you may have seen before. Hopefully there are some new ones there, and quite frankly, if you see if there's one missing here, recommend it to me and I'll give it a watch. Maybe I'll even review it. I'm gonna dedicate this next week to just knocking a bunch out that I haven't seen. Watch The Color Purple. Gonna be reviewing that. There's I haven't reviewed One Night in Miami yet. I haven't reviewed Ma Rainey's Black Bottom yet. Malcolm and Marie. There's just a lot of films I want to be reviewing and giving my attention to moving forward. I wasn't gonna do this for all the reasons I mentioned, and it wasn't until I saw an article that was called 28 Films to Watch During Black History Month that aren't about Black trauma. That kind of gave me the confidence to do it, because I during this month I like to watch films like that still. And there are films like that on my list that aren't necessarily about slavery or the civil rights movement. Because another thing about Black History Month that we got to be careful about is it has to be so much more than just slavery and civil rights movement, you know, and police brutality. That's worth talking about. Don't get me wrong. We need to talk about it. And there are some movies on this list that are about that. But there's a lot of healing and just happiness in just Black representation in films, and just solid badass films with a Black lead, or just wonderful performances from Black characters and wonderful stories from Black characters. So I'll include the link to that article in the description, and also just know that that is kind of the inspiration for this. So you'll be seeing films I mentioned that aren't all about Black history, but there will be just good Black appreciation and Black representation in film. And films just made by Black artists as well. Anywho, let's do this. Let's do honorable mentions first, because we have to honor the mentions that I don't honorably do so. Okay. My honorable mentions are I Am Legend, Black Klansman, Fences, Da 5 Bloods, Driving Miss Daisy, Hotel Rwanda, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. They're great. Go watch them. Okay, let's just do it. Number 10. Okay, so this is one, maybe right off the bat, I was like, all right, should I include this one? I just think Jamie Foxx is a fantastic actor. And this story, too, is really unique. Quentin Tarantino believes in the fantasization of film and of Hollywood. Sure, there's things to keep accurate, but I think he much would rather tell the story we all want to see, you know? And he's very blatant in doing that, and in taking something as sad and as hard as slavery, and at the time place this takes place, and how the story probably would have ended had it been historically accurate, and shows us the ending we want to see, just this satisfying, badass ending. That's just wild and crazy and is so good. Now this film, in respect of dealing with black trauma, this definitely is a film that tackles that and I think does that in a very real way. Also Samuel L. Jackson's character, my gosh, I have never seen Samuel L. Jackson give that good of a performance, I don't think, since Django Unchained. Another aspect of this that kind of goes along the lines of the story we want to see, the whole KKK scene, they're all a bunch of morons. They're just a bunch of idiots. And they make them look so dumb, and it's so satisfying to just watch the two characters just pick them off, you know? And I don't know, I like this film. There's poetic justice served in this film that we all want, we all wished had happened in our history. And it provides that to us. So it's indulgent, I suppose, but I like it. Number 9. One Night in Miami just came out just like a couple months ago. I love it. I love it so much. So good. I haven't gotten around to reviewing it yet because I'm like 99% positive it's gonna get nominated for Best Picture. So I was like, I think I'm gonna review a lot of the Best Picture nominees when that comes out. Because I've only reviewed, of the ones that I think are gonna get nominated for Best Picture, I've only reviewed Trial of the Chicago 7. And a lot of them aren't really relevant anymore, so I was gonna wait till they're a little more relevant to review them again. But I'll talk about it here regardless. This is a fantastic film. It's a very simple story. It's based on a play written by Kemp Powers. This is directed by Regina King. It's her directorial debut, and she's fantastic. She gets wonderful performances out of these people, by the way. There's a lesson that I learned from this, and I'll dive into this more when I actually review this film. I'll just say this much for now. It's not our job to critique how people are trying to make a difference. These 4 people are, the 4 main people in this story are some of the most influential civil rights movement figures and people who made such a big difference within that. And they get into arguments about and critique each other for the things they're doing, you know, and how they disagree with how and there's merit to it. It's not that everything is just stupid, but it's also kind of funny when you sit back and watch that with the context and having the years and years of influence that these people made on the world. After the fact, we can sit there and think, you know, this is a really silly conversation to have. So it makes me think about now, because we have that conversation a lot still of who's doing enough and how and what's effective, and this person shouldn't do this, and that person should have done this instead, and you shouldn't, yada, yada, yada. Maybe that's not really for us to know for sure. You know what I mean? One Night in Miami is a great, 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 great film. Moonlight, you heard me say in my 10 unpopular opinions that I'm not a fan of Moonlight, or I wasn't a fan of Moonlight upon first watching it. Now, a few lessons to learn from this. This is something I've always known, is you always, if you're not sure about a film, you have to watch it again. To understand a film, it at least requires 2 viewings. Most of the time, it at least requires 2 viewings. There's many films I've watched where I watched it the first time and was like, I don't get it. And then watching it a second time, I was blown away by that film. So, always watch a movie twice. Second viewing of Moonlight was great for me. I still have some problems with the film, and I think there's a lot of it that I don't fully grasp still about the film. It's a very subtle film. It's not in your face, like, at all about really anything. The journey is just the journey. It just is what it is. And I always love that. And I really appreciate that. There are some elements of that journey that feel fabricated, which is kind of why I wasn't too much of a fan of it the first time. Watching it the second time, though, that did not bother me as much. It's still there, but it didn't bother me as much because I was able to see the coloring of this film, the cinematography of this film, the production design of this film, the subtle intricacies of the script within this film. I will be frequenting this film from here on out, especially every Black History Month, because I feel like I will be learning from this film for the rest of my life. So, Moonlight was now a... Next one. Do the Right Thing. I want to talk about this one. I don't want to talk about spoilers. I can say this phrase, and I think it's subtle enough that it's not quite talking about spoilers. Because out of context, you may not know what we're referring to. Mookie is the main character of this film, who's played, well, yeah, he's a main character of this film, played by Spike Lee. Spike Lee directed this film, wrote and directed this film. This is the film that kind of put him on the map. It's on AFI's 100 movie list. It's a revolutionary film. It's very, very good. I want to be honest with you about something. I'm gonna be blunt about it though. I'm gonna be just 100% blunt about this film and why it's on here actually. The character Mookie throws a garbage can at one point, which sets some events into motion. I'm not gonna say why or how or what, but that takes place. Now, when talking about this film, I watched an interview with Spike Lee on this film, and he mentioned that even now, this interview took place last year at the 2019 TIFF Festival. He says that even now, he's never had one black person come to him and ask, "Why did Mookie throw the garbage can?" Anyone who's ever asked that has been white. And to be blunt and honest, yeah, I ended the film and was like, why did he do that? I want to talk about thoughts on that without but if I did, I would be spoiling it. I say that to out myself a little bit and go, wow, okay, there's a lot about this situation I don't understand. There's a lot of perspective maybe I don't fully have. Because I think the thing about that too, and I'll just say this, because I know why he does it. I know like the character's motivation for doing it, but there's an element of why being like, oh, maybe you shouldn't have done that I was feeling in there. And I don't know, I don't have an answer for that yet, and I don't really need one. I was just very affected by the film. And not only that, everything leading up to that event that takes place is just so well written. Tackles just racism just everywhere from all across the board. It's a beautiful, brutally honest film. I liked it a lot. It's good. So, Do the Right Thing. Go check that out. On to the next one. Okay, this one may be a little unpopular. I mentioned this when I reviewed Da 5 Bloods. I talked about how Spike Lee makes fantastic films, and I support and really enjoy his movies. He's just he's very arrogant. He's a very arrogant human being. And even in that interview I mentioned earlier, he's so in love with himself. And it's a little annoying to watch, but he makes good movies, so it's fine. I really resent the fact that he gives Green Book and Driving Miss Daisy such a hard time. When it comes to Driving Miss Daisy, the fact that it got nominated and Do the Right Thing didn't, yeah, that's a shame. I like Do the Right Thing more than Driving Miss Daisy. But it's a film trying to accomplish something, trying to send a message, trying to tell a good story of hope and happiness. So screw you if it's not good enough for you. You know what I mean? And that's kind of my thing with Green Book. I really hate the fact that there's so many people who are just mad about this movie being Best Picture. It was Best Picture worthy. That's an unpopular opinion of mine. Maybe I'll do a part 2 of my unpopular opinions and I'll include that one in there. Green Book totally deserved Best Picture. Here's why. This film for me, I think very much captures the problem that we're experiencing today. Racism, and from what I've observed, exists still in the form of ignorance. I would say that Viggo Mortensen's character through this movie is ignorant. He's suffering from ignorance, and he makes assumptions about the black community that are stereotypical, that are insulting, that are prejudiced. And he thinks he's just saying it like it is. He doesn't really think he is doing anything wrong. You know what I mean? He thinks that, I don't know, that a lot of things that he says, we hear a lot today from people still who just don't understand, who are ignorant. It's not so much that they are like actively racist, they're ignorant, you know? And which can result in racism. To see his journey of learning that and becoming informed and then an ally in the end, that's the story I think we all need right now. And that film ended and I was like, it's people, we need more white guys like him in our world who are willing to look at themselves, who are willing to listen and be honest about the changes they need to make those changes, and then become an ally in the end, which is what he does. So I love Green Book. I really like that film a lot. Princess and the Frog, you heard my wife and I talk about this in our romance movies. I love this story so much. This one, it's just a good film. It's just a good film. I mean, first black Disney princess. It's fantastic. What a great way to give some representation. It's such a good story too. Fantastic music. There isn't much more I can say about it that I already haven't said in that romance film, so I'll let you go and watch that. I'll include a little card here for that. But I will just say this is one of my favorite Disney movies of all time. Such a lovely, charming, wonderful romance story. Beautiful animation. There's a simplicity to the film as well that's just so gorgeous. And yet a level of complexity exists within its script, within its imagery, that heightens this film too to a whole nother level. I love Princess and the Frog, and it's been so fun to watch it with my daughter recently. I mean, she's only 3 months old, so she can't talk, but if she's fussy, we put on Dig a Little Deeper, and that helps soothe. She usually just looks at the screen, listens to the song, and she's content. So Dig a Little Deeper, It's been good for my little penny daughter. It's on Disney Plus. Make sure you give Princess and the Frog a watch as well. On to the next one. Remember the Titans. I love Remember the Titans. Can't get any better than that. You know what I mean? It's such a inspiring film. And I think one thing to know, I have this pretty high on my list. I don't think this movie is necessarily of better quality than some of the other ones I've mentioned, but this was just such a staple in my house growing up. I grew up watching this film all the time. It was one of my dad's favorite movies. Maybe it's one of his favorite movies still. I don't know. I just rewatched this film recently, and it had been years since I've seen it. And yeah, there's a lot of moments where they're really wanting us to just feel how inspiring it is, and they're really kind of pushing that in your face a little bit, where it's to the point where it's just not all that effective. However, the performances from Will Patton and Denzel Washington are extraordinary, and they really help this film big time. They help this film big time. It's also just a great sports movie. I think it's a good sports movie. That added element of Coach Boone literally can't lose a game because of how racist everyone is in that community. Otherwise, he's going to get fired. And the work that goes against him to try and get him fired, even though their team is winning still, that's another element of the sports movie that makes it all the better too. You know what I mean? It's definitely a staple for sports films, and I like this film a lot. And I haven't watched it in a long time, and I need to make sure I do that more often. So I will. On to the next one. I love Get Out so much. It's such a good movie. My wife and I watched that movie together, and we were both just so fascinated by that movie. We both have just separately kind of watched it again, just on our own after the fact. I've watched it since, and I've come home and I've found her that she's just been watching it too by herself. Daniel Kaluuya gives a knockout performance here. This film won the Academy Award for Best Screenplay, which makes Jordan Peele the first black person to win that award. He deserves it for this film a lot. Jordan Peele's voice is one that I want to keep seeing in films, and I'm really happy his voice is being so included in our world of film today. So we're going to be seeing more from him for sure, and I'm looking forward to it. I love Jordan Peele as a filmmaker. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. Forget about it. This is probably my favorite Spider-Man movie that exists currently. It's such a good Spider-Man movie. I love it so much. I think the thing about this film that's just really good, Miles Morales is a fantastic character, and in this film is a fantastic character. Relationship with his uncle, relationship with his dad is fantastic. Relationship with other dimension Peter Parker that ensues and grows and is important for both of those characters. All of this is fantastic. And I think the other thing about this that I love is there's a lot of fan service, I guess. But that's the thing about it, though, is it's disguised with just a good story, a good, believable, quirky, no doubt quirky story, but they commit to fully, and it's just so good. It subverts expectations. It's animated gorgeously, by the way. It's beautifully animated. One of my favorite superhero movies of all time, let alone, it's definitely my favorite Spider-Man movie. No doubt about it. Miles Morales, Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. I've talked about this one before. I think I put this in my favorite films of the decade. Because it is. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. Go watch it. And last but not least, obviously, we have In the Heat of the Night stars Sidney Poitier. He is a black homicide detective who gets wrapped up in a homicide case in Mississippi, which is not where he's from. He is from Philadelphia. The social climate and racial climate of Mississippi is vastly different from Philadelphia at the time, and we see him run into some issues because of that. In fact, that has a big to do with how he gets involved in the first place. I was floored by this movie when I watched it. I watched it about a year and a half-ish ago. It's so good. It's so good. You have most likely seen a spoof of this if you've seen the film The Lion King. There's a scene there with Pumbaa at the end when they're all having a big battle, which actually it's a twofer. I think most people associated the thing they're spoofing with Taxi Driver, because he's all like,
"Are you talking to me?
Uh-oh, they called him a pig.
Are you talking to me?
Shouldn't have done that.
Are you talking to me?
but it's the thing he says next.
They call me Mr. Pig!
That is a direct reference to In the Heat of the Night.
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
Now you know what that little bit is from, if you've heard that, because I think it's been spoofed other places as well. It's a very famous line. It's a very powerful line of that film, actually. It's gorgeous. It's a fantastic movie. I just think it's such a snapshot of what was going on at the time in 1967. This film, by the way, came out in 1967 and won the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1967. And it's funny to watch this now because you almost, it seems like a film about that era when it's actually like a film that took place much later that's about, so many years ago. But it's in the thick of it, man. 1967, that's in like the thick of stuff going down, you know what I mean? And for a film like that to be made that's just so blatantly honest about the social climate that existed even then is beautiful. It's insanely beautiful to me, and yeah, it's worth watching and rewatching and revisiting. Like I said, it won the Academy Award for Best Picture. It's currently on AFI's top 100 movie list, and that's one of the main films. I've been going through that list and been watching many films, but that's one of the main ones on that list that I'm like, this deserves to be here and should never be removed because it's so good. It is such a good movie. In the Heat of the Night. Go check it out. All right, there's my list. I did it. Thank you so much for watching. Again, give me recommendations of films I should watch. Thanks so much for watching. Comment, like, subscribe. Bye-bye.